Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another meeting of the Research Triangle PowerShell User Group. My name is Mike Kanakis, and tonight we are going to be talking about a new module called POSH from a gentleman named James Brundage, who we'll introduce in 1 second. But before we do that, my co-host for the evening is Mr. Stephen Judd. Hey, Stephen, how are you?
Oh, Mike, I'm doing really good, and I'm very excited.
All right. So I know that you know our guest very well. Our guest James is a good friend of the group, an esteemed community member. Um,
Yep.
I am very curious to see what James is going to be sharing with us tonight. Um, James, welcome to the group. How are you?
Thanks for having me on. I'm relatively all right. I'm the category of people that, says when they're going through a bit of stuff. So when my dog's going through some health issues, that's a little bit of light stress. Hopefully, we don't have to cut anything short because of that.
Yes. And so for the people at home, James is not a dog. He just has a picture up of a dog in replacement of his wonderful face, and that's quite
Hey,
all right.
hey,
Whatever
Mike,
makes our
Yeah.
speakers feel comfortable.
I
Mike,
mean,
have
I'm
you?
only sometimes metaphorically a dog, and I'm going to have to give a light plug here. I'm using OBS's virtual camera. OBS is a great little streaming software, and I built this module called OBS PowerShell for it to do fun, cool stuff. So you might see a meme or two if I can, stream effectively today. I'm not sure,
The
but
thing I'm liking here, James, is how you've got two different waveform displays going on your screen. That's pretty slick.
thank you. One of them's me, and the other one's basically what's playing through my headset.
I noticed that.
So
Super cool.
thank you. It is actually in the I will be releasing the cool script that can do this in a one-liner in the next build, I promise, sort of category, but obviously prototyped.
A-
Um,
And so this, what you just talked about, James, is maybe the perfect segue for us to get to you because James has spoken for our group in the past. He's spoken at many different community events. One thing that holds true with James is very enamored by PowerShell, creates lots of interesting tools, and loves to share what he does with others. And so the
and
idea
I
that
think
you
that's
built your
three
own
things
OBS
that you make.
module does not surprise me.
Yeah, I built it
uh,
with pipe script.
yeah, yeah. And so we talked prior to this. My interest in PipeScript, so maybe we'll even do another one on PipeScript in the future. But
Yeah.
there's a
Go ahead.
I was just going to say there's a lot of people that watch our meetings on YouTube and don't have a context for the community and may not know exactly who you are or what you do. So why don't you give us a little idea of, who you are and like what your day job is? Because I think a lot of people would be interested to know that.
Well, let's see if PowerPoint is my friend
Uh,
and how this all looks.
yeah.
So, the first slide I got for you, very, very easy presentation I'm working on is who? Who the hell am I? I'm James from Start Automating. I'm ex Microsoft, ex PowerShell team member, and a PowerShell consultant trainer. That is to say, if you need a PowerShell project done, call me, please. And if you want some PowerShell training, we can also set that up. In fact, just because the easy thing to do, you can go ahead and sponsor on GitHub and actually get a PowerShell training session set up, or get recurrent sessions one-on-one and one-on-many on whatever topic you choose at whatever time. So think of it as user groups on demand. Here's some social media contacts. I'm on various ones to various levels, but not that much on any of them. I'm at James Brew on Twitter or X or whatever it's now called. Also, what a dumb marketing move. Why would you name something the literal slang for something you break up with? I don't understand. Anyway, not my problem, not my pay grade. I'm at Mr. PowerShell on Mastodon, various Mastodons, Twitch, and TikTok, although I haven't started really TikToking in earnest yet. I've been programming in PowerShell since 2006. I joined the team the month PowerShell V1 came out and was pretty involved in V1 and or V2 and V3. And ever since then, I've been basically helping people with their PowerShell and, finding joy in life by building lots of community tools and toys. And
All
today
right.
we're going to
So
talk about a fun one. But
so hold on. So
yeah,
hold on.
we're
You
holding on.
you just unpacked a whole bunch there, and I don't want to spend a bunch of time talking about this, but I do want to give some people some context, and then I want to get out of the way and let you do your thing. But so start automating. is your own business, correct?
That's correct.
Yes. And so you are a full-time PowerShell developer, not for a single company, like employed as a W-2 employee. You do custom code, like for projects and contracting for various companies. That's
That
the
is the preference.
Yeah.
I also am bookable on W2, just it's often kind of under that banner anyway. I don't, pro tip for everybody here, if you have a consulting firm, then you never have a gap in your resume, because when you're not working for somebody else, you're working for yourself.
Yes.
So, yeah, I have worked for a pretty astounding large variety of companies at this point. I stopped counting some time ago. I think, in terms of some guesstimates, that I've worked for about 10% of the Fortune 100 over the years. But I also love just kind of getting on calls and helping out people with their random PowerShell questions and stuff. And in fact, that's where I'm trying to find both more joy and more stable income throughout life.
And
So.
and so to bring this together, the reason I brought this up is because you have what I think I have heard in my career probably 8 or 10 times from fellow coworkers what many would consider a dream job: full-time PowerShell developer working for himself. And so, at some point, if you have the opportunity, maybe towards the end of the talk or the middle, whatever, if you can talk about how that journey occurred, I think that would be interesting to a lot of people.
I think that'd
Um,
be a fine one. We might need a whole long conversation just
you
on that.
you
I'm happy to go into it in public, honestly, at this point. It's part of my own life's journey on it. Um, the quick long story made short, though, is that it's been incredibly personally rewarding, because I love working with PowerShell and continuing to kind of grow the language over time and seeing what people do with it and helping them out. And I've had the opportunity to do that at this point now for, well, 16, 17 years. I've done PowerShell every day of my professional and most of my personal life for those years, and it's brought me a lot of great joy, and it's done a lot of great things on behalf of a lot of clients. That all stated, there is a nicheness to expertise, and there is a feast or famine effect attached to that. So, in years that I've done well, I've probably made more than most people on this call. And in years that I've done poorly, I might have made less than your paper boy. So, it is not all sunshine and roses. But also, do they even still have paper boys? Um, but it has been really, really fun, and when it's good, it's been very good. It's just also sometimes a little bit of a stars need to align in order to get the really cool and interesting PowerShell project that is really desperately needed now and is thus very lucrative, versus, you know, the company that doesn't really need that much but needs it, over the next few months, and didn't expect somebody that could do it in a month and says bye. So, there's a little bit of diminishing returns on extraordinary expertise. That also stated, for everybody else, this is very much a unique problem. There are so many line jobs in PowerShell now, and it makes me such a proud papa of the language that I can't even begin to express. I was talking to Bruce Payette a couple weeks ago and was like, "Hey, man, this thing that we built created 500,000 jobs. That's crazy, right?" We're on
that's
a
a
whole user group conversation full of people that make a living off of PowerShell. Like, you might think it's the dream job, but you've got the easy version of it, where you don't have to, like, chase everybody's dreams, but you can find all that joy in PowerShell and a nice steady living. And that's something that didn't exist for tons of people 15, 20 years ago. And a lot of the people in PowerShell came up from, non-technical backgrounds or non-expert spaces and got
Oh yeah.
massive improvements in their life. So it's been really, really, really rewarding, and I'm not going to, stop enjoying that sort of reward. It's just also not always, sunshine and roses. But PowerShell, that's sunshine and roses every day.
For some of us, we feel like we're getting to explore the benefits of the work that all the people did before us, and sometimes it feels like we're standing on the shoulders of giants. And so we're all very grateful for the amount of time that you and Bruce and the entire team put in. And not to discount what's still going on because the team is still rolling. Steve is very involved, Steve Lee, that is, with making sure that PowerShell stays on track and gets new features and doesn't break everything behind that came before. So, that team is still doing yeoman's work, and I love it. So, thanks, James, for all you did.
Thank you. And again, that's part of the great reward. I don't know. I'm not going to, call myself any form of giant, but if you're building frameworks and you're building capability for others to use, the most rewarding thing that can possibly happen to you is seeing that utility. And I went from basically fighting a very fierce internal battle within Microsoft. Hey, this is PowerShell. This is going to be cool. You guys need to pay attention. And, you know, doing some of the same thing externally by, showing off, hey, here's these cool things PowerShell can do. And basically feeling like it was, a small team kind of against the world to I can walk into a data center and see row after row after row of computers running PowerShell. PowerShell is, not just a lot of people's jobs, it's a whole sector of the industry. And
Yep.
every additional thing that I build that you guys get to use just makes my heart, swell with joy and pride. Not necessarily at myself, but at like what you guys can do. The really rewarding ethos of PowerShell has been making things easier and making it so that you don't have to be any form of giant to do gigantic things to move mountains. And anything that I can do to continue to make that happen makes me a happy camper. So
Well, let me use that to segue to what we're going to talk about tonight, which is the reason that I sort of brought this up, and I didn't mean to kind of get a little bit off topic here, and so
that's okay. I mean,
just
it's
everybody
easier
bear
to
with
get the,
us.
the the
There,
tip
there,
of the
there
iceberg
there's
done now than the whole
there's a
talk later.
reason for this, and that is we have a certain caliber of people that come on and present, and very much so, the things that people present are very much corporate work oriented, right? This problem I had to solve at work or something like that. I mean, we have our fair share of presenters that come on and do fun stuff as well. But one thing that you're going to learn very quickly hanging out with James here is that, and if you breeze on over to his repo, and I hope you have a link you could share with us if you haven't,
Yeah,
if it
I'll
wasn't on
throw
the
it in the
slides.
chat.
James has quite a wide array of tools that he's built with PowerShell to do things that you might not even think about doing with PowerShell. And so the dream job of being a PowerShell developer, I feel like James is really representative of someone who kind of lives the life. I keep seeing stuff that you build, and it's for things that I would have never have considered to try to address with PowerShell. And so, if you're watching at home and you want to find out more about James, visit the repo. He's got a, a very large bag of tools that you could use for not just how do I get data from Active Directory or how do I get, data from here to there for some corporate thing, but like how do you control your lights at home and how do you control OBS and how do you colorize your code and how do you do all these things? And oh, by the way, I built my own set of utilities to write all my code faster. There's a lot to unpack with James. And so I guess what I wanted to ask you is what is what brought you to the POSH module? What was the idea here? And then
Okay.
maybe you could take it from there.
All right. Well, I'm just going to go back into the slide deck because I
Sure.
got some
And
quick answers to that.
and your slide deck, just so you know, and Steve, maybe you can answer. It's not centered on the screen, so half your text is cut off.
Uh-oh.
I don't know if that's a Teams thing or
Well,
just the way you
it's
centered the
it's
slides.
because he's sending it through the video. So if we turn off our videos, then he goes full screen, I believe.
All right,
Well,
so
let me
let's.
try doing this for a second. I think I can also share content from camera. Let's see if this works. Share. Does
There
that
we
work?
go. There we go.
There we go.
Yay!
Yeah, that's good. I'm gonna turn my camera off anyway.
All right.
All right. So we covered the who. Today we're talking about this new toy, Posh. And Posh is this new PowerShell module. Makes the shell a little bit more sleek. It enhances formatting. Makes the shell easier to customize. It hopefully will help you learn PowerShell. And when and where, we'll get into why in a half second. That's the one you asked. It just dropped at Tech Mentor 2023, which was a great conference and a lot of fun. That was a couple weeks ago. I had done a talk entitled Fantastic Formatting with Easy Out. Easy Out is actually the oldest PowerShell module. It is used to write formatting and types, which are a part of PowerShell that's been there since the beginning and are basically there to help you format how objects are displayed and extend existing types. They're also unfortunately horrible XML and nobody likes them, hence Easy Out. And I perpetually get asked to talk about Easy Out, and people had kind of complained a little bit about Easy Out containing formatters. I guess we're kind of bleeding into why. So where can you get it? It's available on the PowerShell gallery. You can also get it on GitHub, and here's where we get to the stupidly brave part of the conversation here. I actually have a new version's pull request queued up, and I love the smell of CI/CD in the early evening, so I'm just going to go ahead and merge that now and delete my branch and go to watch my actions run. This is built with another module called PS DevOps, and this lets me basically get this out the door. So in a few seconds, we should see the new version come out and it go out on gallery.
So, just a quick thing for you, James. Just keep in mind that your cool wave formatting thing there is going to go over your
Yeah,
demos.
I'm getting rid of yours, and I'm gonna try to adjust the opacity of this one here.
Yeah.
There we go.
Also, I didn't know we were doing a GitHub push to repo lightning summary.
You know, there's lots of fun here. I'm just kind of a little annoyed that it took a little bit longer than I'd like to publish. But to be fair, it's actually been running the other parts of the action for a second. So, okay, we got release 0.12. I'm going to actually drop that second waveform entirely. Sorry. Hopefully the other stuff will be cool enough.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And we should be able to go to PowerShell Gallery. Now, on the bright side, I am pleased as Peach that I was actually able to get the module name POSH. On the bad side, there are a lot of other modules that have some variation of POSH, so it's on the second page here now. And yep, we have a new set of bits out. So go get the ones fresh off the press. Okay. So you can get it on GitHub, github.com/startautomating/posh. Please start and show your support. I am actually legitimately trying to make GitHub sponsorship into something of a business model. So, if you like modules, please star them and consider, giving sponsorship. So why build this? I make little sayings to remember things, and one of them is never do anything for just one reason. So here's my quick, short set of reasoning to make Posh. One, I needed some fantastic formatting. Like at its core, this started off as not exactly demoware. I wanted to show something that would be, well, very sleek formatting, and I had a presentation coming up. Number two, people really like colors and spicy shells. Like this is just proven by downloads. I think like if you looked at Oh My Posh has something like 2 million downloads. And presumably that's not a CI/CD heavy module. That is roughly 2 million people were like, I want to download this. So, maybe it'll be popular. Number three is that people did not like Easy Out, including too much formatting. A bunch of the formatting that is in Posh had been in Easy Out for a very long time as kind of an example. And this actually got a pretty negative reaction because Easy Out is primarily about creating these types and format files for you, and it disrupted what they expected in terms of shell experience. So people had basically said, hey, you should put all that into a separate module for a while, and I finally got around to it. The other one is a little bit schmarmy. I know you talked about, not being too business focused, but modules are brands. And this helps make modules more marketable, including itself. That is, it helps you see screenshots and videos and demos and all the other things that help make a module really pop. And the other bit is that gateways are good. This provides like a nice little, siren call in order to show people all sorts of other fun stuff they could do in PowerShell that they might not have expected. And also, creating something cool is always good for business. Same general principle. I don't mean to be, again, too schmarmy or businessy, but oh, look at me, I'm doing cool PowerShell stuff. Please hire me. That is at least part of the name of the game to the dream job you talked about. It's continually building out stuff that says, look, this is cool as PowerShell. So that's why. I hope it's not too crass of a why. Should we get into the how or jump right into the exploring? What do you guys want to do?
Well, so you built this because it was fun and cool. You had it in need, right? And so, what's the general sense of what people are going to see with this module tonight? Like, just this is a mod like for people who don't know and maybe just stumbled into this. This is a formatting module to colorize your console in more than a few ways, right?
Yeah, it's a module to help improve the shell experience,
Okay, and
make
so
PowerShell cooler.
the how is how you built it.
The how is how I built it. Yep.
Yeah, we would love to see that. But so my suggestion would be, um, let people see your colorizing, and then I would say let's talk about the how after you do that, just so we don't get too far down the rabbit hole and people don't understand what the heck you're talking about. But that's just
All
me.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to do one quick thing here. I'm going to, switch back over to my main branch. Oh, need to get rid of some files here. Sorry. I can type, I swear. This is actually why I have show demo, so I don't have to type in most of these cases. But
Show demo being another one of your fabulous creations.
yes, which we'll be using in a second, I promise. So
I
right now we have our normal PowerShell directory output or file output in this case. These are the files in POSH. POSH is not yet installed or imported. And we're just going to go ahead and import module POSH or dot slash because this is the way I love to import local modules.
and
Go ahead, Mike.
let me just stop you. And so for if someone is sort of a little newer to PowerShell, what they're seeing on the screen right now is just simple PowerShell 7 formatting,
Yep,
just the basics that comes out of the box. I don't want people to think that the assets build demos is part of the stuff that you did. You're basically saying it's going to get, we're going to go bigger from here. This is what you get by default with PowerShell.
that is correct.
Right.
Okay. So actually, I'm going to say pass through when I'm going to import this module because one of the things it formats is itself.
Oh, that's cool.
Thank you. I actually do a similar thing for the OBS PowerShell module as well, but basically you can add a formatter to anything, and you can. There's a thing called duck typing where you basically say, essentially, you're a duck. And in PowerShell, you can very easily modify something called PS type names on any given object and add whatever type name you'd like. So one of the first easy tricks at play is that Posh decorates itself. Basically, it says, hey, I'm not just any module, I'm Posh. And then I write a formatter for that. And therefore, you see this instead of the normal module output. Now, when I still do get module, I still see basically the normal output. But let's go back to a file view. Now we got these icons. We still have our colorization. We've got our length in kilobytes or megabytes or gigabytes for that matter. Everybody with me so far?
Oh, so I didn't even pick that up because I was looking at your module ahead of time. So it's not just color. This is really a formatter for common items. So like you said,
This particular
length,
one is a formatter for, files and directories. But yeah, it tries to make length better too. And last write time is the first column instead of having a mode or access, which isn't useful to everybody under every circumstance.
very cool.
In fact, like slight pet peeve here, but inside of a GitHub action, the formatting for files is so kind of annoyingly bad that it'll always truncate the file name because it's busy displaying the user, which is always Docker. So it's like, okay, thank you for that useless information in exchange for the useful information that I really needed. So one of the things that I'm trying to do here is basically take things that kind of suck in PowerShell formatting and make them better. There is also the module terminal icons, and I'm not going to demonstrate this because it gets a little bit funky, but you can use terminal icons in lieu of this and still get basically their presentation. The thing with terminal icons that kind of sucks is that you have to have nerd fonts installed. And nerd fonts is a really large package of, well, fonts for nerds. If it's that important to you to have an extra special PowerShell icon, go ahead. But I personally think this one looks quite fine. And there are a lot of emoji that work on any given, you know, font that you'd like. So at
So
this
you're
point, I'm pretty happy with just trying to find appropriate emoji.
so you're basically saying nerd fonts has its place and terminal icons and all that, but what people may not realize is to bring that down and to have that running on your system requires a lot of baggage. And
Yeah,
you're saying I
uh,
could basically do the same thing a lot less.
with a lot less baggage. But hey,
Yeah.
you want your terminal icons? You know what? Fine, I will show it. Import module terminal icons. So you can still have your terminal icons. I'm not saying that this is going to be the prettiest part of this particular thing. I don't have to care. I mean, it's not the only trick in this book or bag. So let's see if my
Maybe
child
remove it.
icon, yeah, I just have to remove both modules for it to be happy again. Okay, let's do that again and see if I've made this demo a demo of terminal icons. Nope, I'm good. Back to normal. Okay,
So, so James, you're probably going to cover this, but I'm curious. How did
sure.
you determine which columns and which format?
Uh, I don't know. Years of experience, gut.
Well, what I mean
Um,
by that, I probably asked that question poorly, is
Pouring
you
over lots of emoji and saying, "Did this seem right?" and picking ones that sort of lined up with each other.
right.
Uh,
So, if anybody has had the unfortunate experience of trying to build their own formatter in the built-in PowerShell, you go into XML disaster
yes.
area. That's kind of what I was
Let's
getting at, is how did you do that?
sure. Let's bring over the project. We're into the how, so let's go into the how. All right. So which one did you want to see the file system? Okay. So we actually have two views of files. One of them supports the icons at this point, and the other one does not. Uh, Mainly because I haven't made the icons as customizable as I would like. Okay, so let's start with the easy part. Instead of writing, well, here, let me test my luck with F5. That's the large XML that's required to make this work. This is what this file does. It produces that XML for me, right? Format view, that's easy out. Okay? So we're saying we're writing a format view for the type name file system types. Now, this takes a bit of annoying explaining, and file system types is basically the only one, but you can either say that you're displaying a type name or one or more type names, or what's called a selection set, which is basically a group of type names with a name. So you can also include the XML directly if you feel like that masochistic, or you just want to get around what it can do naturally. And this is what a selection set is. So file system types would format directory info and file info. Okay. Then I'm saying I want three properties: last write time, length, and name. Everybody with me so far?
Yeah, but I'm gonna let you finish your thought, then I'm gonna slow you down for a second because I have
That's
a
okay.
thought. Yeah.
All right. So then we're going to cover this part next. And that's just property alignment. You can actually align any column left, right, or center. In this case, I'm just doing two rights and a left. Okay. Um, just
That's
to enhance
better
the
than
readability.
that's better than two wrongs make a right.
Fair. And, I do set up the dad jokes every once in a while. The next part is a little tedious, as you can kind of see, but basically it's like, hey, do you have a length? Okay, are you bigger than a gigabyte? Cool, display you as big gigabytes. Are you bigger than a megabyte? Cool, display you as megabytes. Are you bigger than kilobyte? Cool, display you as kilobytes. If you're not in directory info, otherwise display what your length is. So if you're less than a kilobyte, it'll just be a number. If you're more than a kilobyte, it'll be, number rounded to the number of kilobytes or with 2 decimal places and so on and so forth. Okay,
Hmm.
so a lot of little annoying code, but not really that frustrating. And virtual properties are basically just the term and easy out for what you're doing in formatting, which is you're basically saying, I'm going to display this property, and it's going to have a script block as its value instead. Okay. And it took me a while to realize it, but you can drive a big truck through that whole, like, you can basically add colorization and formatting there too. So that was our length. Okay. Then for our name, we do a couple things. First thing we do is we figure out, is there format terminal icons? This is where that particular magic works. And this is a little bit more complicated than many, but basically, I'm letting it fall back explicitly on this if you have it. So if I found this, great, I'm going to use that. Actually, now that I'm seeing this, I understand why it requires me to unload POSH before it stops or starts working again. Anyway, next thing is a little bit more hard-coded than I would like at this point, but basically, if you're a directory, I'm going to go use this thing in PS style. Now, PS style is a pretty new thing in PowerShell, and I'm kind of mixed on it, but I have integrated it with easy out. And PS style gives you all these different, basically, ways you can style something in ANSI. The thing that's kind of nice about this is that, well, it's built right in. And the other thing that's kind of nice is that if you're using this form of style, it will adapt to whatever color scheme you have in the terminal or inside of VS Code. Make sense?
Yes.
Cool. So they also have a few kind of special options here. One of them is file info. And file info basically give you a color that you can set for the directory or for an executable. And I actually add a little bit more information to this as well. But you then have this extension format that you can use that basically says, hey, these extensions will be rendered by that color. And that's what this code does here is it checks, hey, do I have something for that extension? Great, do that. And this is something that I added, just basically because you can add member to PS style. So I added a dictionary for patterns. And now I could have other naming based or colorization based off of the pattern. I'm not doing this yet, but the reason I would want to do something like this is, well, a PS1 XML file isn't just any XML file. And say a Docker file doesn't have an extension, but I might want to colorize it. Does this make sense?
Yeah. I'm
Okay,
I'm
cool.
I'm I'm looking for a graceful break here.
Okay, well, we're basically at the graceful break because the rest of the code after this is basically, here is my, I'm going to make this extensible, part of the if, but I haven't done it yet. And then here is my hard-coded, if you've got this extension, these are the icons we're using. And it's just a big switch. And then at the end of this, oh, yeah, real bonus points that I should show you here. So if I do a directory here, see how these are underlined? Well, I can
Uh-huh.
control click and boom, I can open the file.
Wow, that's cool.
Thank you. And this is basically, let me close that out and close that out 1 second. So this is just if PS style has a format hyperlink and I'm not in a GitHub workflow where it's going to basically just show this as a blank anyway, then I'm going to use format hyperlink. And I'm going to link you to the file. And this will work in VS Code and in Terminal. In VS Code, the files that are that it will open are restricted to the workspace. So anything underneath the workspace it'll open in VS Code. Anything else it'll just basically say no. In Terminal, it just basically invokes item. So I can go do a directory of my videos here. Home videos. And in Terminal, I could click any one of these and just play.
All right.
So,
So I got
So
okay,
questions
now
for you.
we're at our stopping point for a second. Go
now,
for it.
Mike,
Okay.
Mike, I got a quick one before you jump in.
Sure.
Okay.
Oh,
Sure.
just a quick one.
Yeah, quick one. I am not. James, would you go back to what we were just looking at, where they had the GitHub? I'm not familiar
Which
with
part of the
what that
GitHub?
environment variable. You had an environment variable with GitHub on it.
Oh, sure.
I'm not familiar with GitHub Workspace. Could you explain that?
Um, most of the CI/CD systems that you have, like Azure DevOps or GitHub Workflow, they set a bunch of environment variables. So all that I'm doing here is and this is a thing you can do in formatting, as I'm checking to see if I'm in a GitHub workflow. Because if I am in a GitHub workflow, that environment variable will exist.
Okay.
So if I can format hyperlinks and I'm not in a GitHub workflow, and honestly, I could probably add a couple more lines of documentation here to make it a little bit easier. Slight touche. But yeah, I would probably add a couple more for Azure DevOps and other CI/CDs as I use them and get to them. I would be a little, I don't know, surprised if it works in other ones, if it's not working in GitHub workflows, partially because of the way they're built. Um, I'm also kind of a little annoyed because it wouldn't hurt that much to be able to have a clickable link in your logs, but this is a thing. If I did this in GitHub workflow and I was displaying this, output of a directory, it would not link the files correctly and it would just display a blank there. And that would suck.
Ah, okay. All right. That makes sense. Thanks, Mike.
Okay. So I'm
Okay.
kind of glad that we went off the rails a little bit when we did the intros because it sort of set the tone for what we're doing here. And that's great. But we went from the beginning of your demo, which was fine and was still fine. And somehow when we got to the how, I James, I should have expected we went like right down into the plumbing and 300 level stuff and that is completely fine. One of the reasons I love having
Stephen
James
asked.
present, no, that's fine. One of the reasons I like having James present is because you get to see how someone like James thinks and works, and James can work very fast. There's a bunch of stuff that you brought up that I am sure audience members did not catch, so I want to go back a little bit. But
All right.
before I do that, I want to help out people at home that may be confused. You went into the plumbing of the module.
I went into how the module is built, yes,
Right.
which
Someone who's
is
interested
over
in
in my
using your
VS Code.
module does
Can
not
just
need to be concerned with what we're looking at. You answered a question that Stephen asked about, hey, how'd you build those columns? And it was fun to go off on the deep weeds of the plumbing.
Yeah,
But for
but you
someone
could
who's
just
watching at
import
home,
module POSH and have clickable links in VS Code and not give two shits about anything else.
right. So I'm just saying, if you're interested in this module and you want to play around with color, you don't need to go into these files and learn how to configure this stuff. Essentially, you've done this work for them.
That
You
is
just happen to
correct.
talk about how I did it. So if you're interested in this module and you're like, whoa, I can't do the stuff you're saying, you wouldn't be doing this. He's
You
showing
don't
you
have to.
right. Okay. So with that being said, for the people that were following along and watching you, what some people may not understand, James, and I know this from talking with James at summits and from other demos, James builds a lot of tools. And James has figured out along the way that James wants to build tools that help him build tools as fast as possible. So there was a point there, James, where you showed the long XML file. You even made the comment, oh, this is the long XML file that gets produced.
Yep.
James has his own tools to write those files for him, and that may not have been understood by people. That write format view comes from another module that James owns, that James created, that I know from history. James uses these as utility modules to do all the heavy lifting of his module building and code writing so that he doesn't have to sit there and write thousands of lines of code. He's figured out ways to automate as much of his workflow as possible. And so I mentioned that because when you talked about this, for someone trying to follow along, they may not have picked up on those little like, where the hell did that come from kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
there's a lot going on in your modules. Very cool, but if people don't understand sort of the guts, they may get lost.
Yeah. Well, on that level, let's talk a little bit about. I'm not been ever a big user of something like Plaster, but I have kind of been coming more and more to a fairly standardized structure of how I lay out a lot of my modules. So you got an assets directory, and that's going to have, well, any images or anything that goes along with it. Okay. got a build directory, and that's going to have any files that are used to help build the module. In this case, we got a few. We got our easy out file, which basically goes and builds our types and formats. We got our GitHub workflow file, which builds our GitHub workflow. We got our help out file, and this actually basically loads Posh and gives us markdown help for every script method in it. We got a little PSSVG file, which helps build us a logo. And this one's a little bit of a light cheat. Posh doesn't actually include any commands directly, but it does basically have this functionality of a module called splatter kind of as part of it. So these 5 files basically help automatically build the whole thing. Then you got demos directory, and that's showing off how it works. Docs directory is where all those markdown files will go, and also it's going to be your root of your GitHub page. Formatting directory, that's going to contain your formatting, okay? And it's generally PS1 XMLs, or sorry, format.ps1s, but it can be format or format XMLs or view.ps1s as well, okay? The technical difference here is that views will basically assume that they're a custom formatter by default, but they can be exactly the same thing. So you got different formatting directories for different stuff because it makes it easier to kind of see. So I've got all the file system stuff grouped. I'm going to get to this one, but this one's empty at the current. I'm going to make get help and work in color too, I promise. But I am not there yet. I've got all these formatters for Posh itself. I've got some formatters for reflection. I got some formatters for some regex. I got some formatters for some XML. And I'm going to just show a demo of this in a second because that's going to be a lot easier than walking through each one. But the structure is fairly logical. You should be able to go to the repo and explore. Going further down, you've got the definition of its GitHub job, which is basically run this, check out the repository, go use PSSVG, splatter, pipe script, easy out, and log my changes to this thing I built called Git Logger, which gives you basically insight into what you're checking in for $1 a repo a month. And underneath here, you got, I haven't finished it yet, the kind of concept of presets. So we're going to come back to that maybe in a future talk. And then you've got a types directory. And this basically has all of the extended types that you wanted to do. So I've got, some stuff for Posh here. And I've got how commands are displayed and how errors are displayed and little extensions to the host and this stuff that I haven't finished on presets yet, and profile manipulation and stackable functions, including input and prompt. And then a bunch of stuff that makes PS module infos easier, like being able to recommend other modules, having a logo, having a demo file, having screenshots, being able to get tests, and getting videos. So lots of expansion to PowerShell. No commands. If I get command module posh, there will be nothing because this is built entirely with types and formats, which is, in my opinion, kind of cool. Let's go show off an actual demo and save me some typos. So show demo. I'm going to demo this. Okay, here we go. Well, I'm just going to make sure I've got this re-imported.
And show demo is
demo
one of your
is,
and show
yep,
demo is one of your modules that you've built. And if people are curious about using that, visit the repo.
visit the repo. It's nice. It prevents typos and gives you this nice little, auto typing format for displaying your demos. This is also like a very old thing in PowerShell made new again. Show demo is like a newer version of a thing that Jeffrey Snover wrote a long time ago called Start Demo.
Gotcha.
But okay,
It's
so
really good, and I like it. I think the last time I did one of my janky demonstrations where I was showing how to type into the console automatically, James kind of caught me afterwards and said, "Have you seen show demo?"
yeah, it's been handy. And one of the things that I'm happy about with Posh is that I can basically now say if any module just puts a demo PS1 in there, well, I can get module for each object demos. And then I can pipe that into show demo. Do I want to
All
see
right.
how a module works? Boom. Good. Done. Okay.
Show us Posh.
Show it into your
We
Posh.
we could cue James up with anything and
Yep, you can. So the only thing that Posh exports is itself as a variable, $posh. And one of the critiques that I got as far as the name already was basically, hey, if you're going to name it, Posh, and you got to be able to do more general PowerShell stuff than formatting. And so I'm trying to make that possible too. Um, Hence the formatter for it and the nice way you can pipe it to get member and see what else it can do. But let's take a quick tour of how it'll make the PowerShell shell cooler. I'm actually going to start recording for a second because I want this one too. So show files in color with clickable links. This is step one. And we can get module posh, split path, which basically gets the directory the module's in, get child item. There we go. Same formatter you already saw. No typing required. Posh icons do not require nerd fonts and will be ignored in favor of terminal icons if that's what you prefer. Or if I'm going to make an old political-ish riff on it, you want your terminal icons, you can keep your terminal icons. Posh updates the formatter for get command. This one's a pretty new one. Although Posh itself was only a few weeks old, so pretty new is kind of variable. But this one was created specifically for Posh. So I'm basically going through the list of what commands do we use all the time in PowerShell that don't have good formatting. And get commands formatting is, I've got 4 columns. I mean, we just added to the point where we can have colorized files. Why shouldn't I be able to colorize commands? Also, I don't generally need to see the module version of the command every time, so, just the name in the module is fine. And I'm going to colorize the name based off the verb. Ready?
Oh,
that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
look at that. So you're
I
coloring
also do
by
some
the verb.
italicization. Yep. And basically, it's the same sort of code as you saw in the other one, at least right now, where it's got a little switch statement and doing some regex for what verb is what color. And I've tried to make sure that verbs that are right next to each other are not the same color, and verbs that are similarly colored. And there are a few ones that are so generic that I said, okay, you can still remain in white.
Fascinating.
And I also did try to make certain verbs that could be quasi-dangerous,
They made him poop
basically
brown.
warmer colors.
I'm
Well,
kidding.
I mean,
I'm
it's a
totally
different color
kidding.
scheme on this. Here, I mean, after this, we'll go show like changing color schemes around. I just don't know which one I have loaded right now. So another one that I had in easy out for a long time, but wanted to move into Posh was formatting for get member. Does everybody know get member?
Sure.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I call get member, get command, and get help the trinity of discoverability.
Hmm.
Like, because they're just the way that I find my way around PowerShell all the time. Like, I don't know what you output. What property, what name was it again? Pipe it to get member, find out, right?
Yes.
So Posh lets that work in color too.
So you're coloring based on the property type.
I'm coloring based off of the property type and the type name and the name of the thing, and also a little bit to help you see, curly braces and the like.
It's very cool looking.
Thank you. And I hope it's a little bit more useful because now I can basically, all right, I want to see what methods it's going to be. I'm looking for yellow. I want to see what properties I'm looking for green. I want to know what type. I can very easily train my eye to look for a particular color and seek the information more easily. And I mean, this is one of those things that like, A has been sort of studied over the years. B, I've learned a little bit too much about. The long story made short to the degree it has been well studied is there's a guy in the 80s by the last name of Tullis who figured out that seek time is related to basically column count, to the number of different it takes you an amount of time to read something based off of the number of different distinct points of horizontal alignment. Which means on a basic practical level, even though I can center stuff in a formatter, I almost never do. Because centering actually forces your eye to resync all the time. But what this gives me is basically pretty clean columns of when things change. So the column spacing already gave me that. Changes in contrast effectively work like changes in spacing. So I can actually look very rapidly at that property column, or very rapidly at here, or pick out a type, and it's very, very easy for me to find the key pieces of information that I want. And
So,
if you
so
wanted to figure out essentially that seek time, you're looking for basically how many times your eye needs to move to get to the exact point. So if I wanted to figure out, what type can I get from toString, even though that's a really obvious one, I'm looking for scanning down for this, then this, then this, then this. So a TLS rating of 9. Very fast.
So you're essentially saying here that PowerShell puts out a ton of useful information, but very rarely do people read PowerShell like they're reading a book where they would read every word on the page. And so you're trying to say, I'm defining a way here to sort of show the different variances of data so that you can find what you want quickly and get to the piece you want. So if
Yeah,
you're not interested in properties, you can just bypass all that because it's all looking the same and the methods stand out. If you're not interested in methods and you just want properties, they sort of stand out on their own. So that's kind of, really smart and useful because I never really thought about it until I saw it with the color like this. I see this page all the time when you do get member, and some commands, especially like string stuff, will throw up, 30, 40 lines. And I'm like, I really only wanted one line out of the 30. And so you're sort of making the data that I'm looking for jump out a little bit more and I can find it easy. That's pretty cool.
thank you. And yeah, that's part of the point here. And honestly, as I was saying towards the beginning, I feel like this is something PowerShell initially had a good lead in and now needs to kind of leapfrog. And so I'm kind of trying to basically bring all of the PowerShell default formatting up to the next level. And, like I don't think asking you to install one module to get all this is that much. But
So
we got
let me
more
ask.
formatters. We're
So I
not
want to go with that, but I want to ask a question about just the start of this. So because
okay.
I missed the importance of the $ posh. So I install your module. What do I need to do to basically invoke this to make it run? Is it just
If
install
you
and it's
i-
on, or I
install and
have to
import,
enable?
once it's
Okay,
imported, all the formatting will snap right in.
okay. And so install
And
and
the
import and
variable
everything I see
posh
here
will
is
be there
basically
for you and you'll be good.
okay. So install and import and everything that you're sort of showing here just becomes the default.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So, oh, there we go. Sorry, it took a little bit of focus stealing to get me back there. Um, Already shown the output for get command. But it's also easy to explore reflection. Now, sometimes you know what type something is, but you don't have an actual instance of it. And I basically said, hey, I want that to be in color too. So I can pipe any type to format custom. And I'll get this. This is the short form, believe it or not, summary view of its properties, methods, etc. Okay, so this is all the stuff an int can do, or at least all the stuff an int32 can do directly. And I can actually pipe this into a different view. Now, this is a good thing to highlight here because it's not really well known about PowerShell, but not only can you format an object any number of ways, you could have any number of views for an object. Okay? So this is the short form, well, not the quite shortest form. For that, just get the table view that you get normally, but you can actually get all of the information, including its subclasses, with format custom dash view system type full.
Whoa.
And before you even ask, this also works for generic types. Read them and weep.
All right. So I'm going to ask you a question that I don't know that you can demo here,
Okay.
but I have very little experience with format custom, and so I'm guessing a lot of people watching do as well. And so you sent this to format custom. What would format custom normally do?
Um,
Because I don't know that people are going to pick up what you're doing if they don't understand what format custom does on its own.
that's a good question. Okay, so there are 4 built-in format dash commands in PowerShell. Okay, format table, format list, format wide, and
Hmm.
format custom. The format table and format list you might have run into before. They're, common enough, and they give you somewhat direct control over how a particular table will look. Okay? Format wide, as I say in many a talk, is basically useless.
I agree.
Um, so we're just gonna forget that for a bit, but it theoretically is supposed to be like a wide column view. It just only can render one thing, and it doesn't render it well. And anyway, format custom is exactly what it sounds like. It'll format any object in a custom way. Now, by default, format custom is pretty ugly. The default custom formatter essentially 2 strings down as far as it can go. So it'll basically be a complete output of the object in a way that is almost entirely unusable. Um, I kind of wish PowerShell would do something about that, and I probably will eventually. It's just picking battles and order of operations. It is fairly likely within a couple months I'll figure out what I want format custom to be by default for every object instead. Um, but if you format custom a normal object, it'll just spit out all that subproperty information and not be particularly usable. If you write a custom formatter, then format custom will use that. If you wrote a custom formatter and you put it above a table and file formatter, then it's going to use the custom formatter by default, and the user would never be the wiser. So that's what's going on when we see like $posh. In that case, there is one
Mhm.
formatter defined, and it's a custom formatter. Okay?
Okay, so just for the record, if people want to follow along at home, I just did get child item on the directory I'm in on my computer, which is like some temp directory or scripts directory, and then I sent that to format custom, and I
Uh,
got
I'm not
a
lying
lot
about
of
how
hot
ugly it
garbage.
is.
I
Yeah.
got a lot of hot garbage.
I mean,
And
here we'll show off a show demo feature in a second. Question mark out? Nope, never mind. We're going to show the show demo feature needs some work. Um, I was going to suspend the demo and see. I'll come back to it later.
yeah, I
Just
was just gonna
open
say
a
that
just
form
open a
there's a
new terminal window and do it.
Uh,
You should be able to do it from there.
I,
yeah,
I
I know, but
I was
why
just
you got
gonna
to make
say
things
that
easy?
I was just gonna say that there's a reason I don't
It's
know
going to give me
format
this kind of
custom too
warning
well.
here. So I'm going to say dir select first 10. Actually, let's dir my modules. I can type posh. Okay, format custom.
Yeah, that is some hot garbage, man. That's why I didn't know that command too well because there's nothing coming to that useful for me.
Yeah,
Hey,
which is
what do
it's a little bit annoying because like, you could make the default a YAML formatter maybe. That might look kind of nice, or a toml formatter, but like they're just like, okay, every object as deep as we can go. And then there are other things that are already kind of like overexposed with extra information, like, oh, here's a time span on a date time. You didn't you didn't want to stop when you realized it was a date time, because this is not helpful.
I'm sorry we went off the rails with this, but I am so glad we did. That is so interesting.
It's all right. You're just like, I'm gonna need to fix it in post as far as actually, like turning this recording into something like, you know, a little bit more choppy. But anyway, another custom format that we include here is colorized XML. So here's like a SVG hello world. Just doing invoke rest method, it's giving me back an XML object. It's being rendered as colorized XML. Now, I will say this thing gets a little bit sort of potential backfire territory when your XML is massive. It takes a while. I'm going to try to figure out how to be a little bit smarter about that and not render massive XML in color. But yeah, colorized XML. Is this fantastic formatting? Is this posh? Is this
Well,
what you really, really want?
I will say this: when I was kind of prepping a little bit for this module and learning a little bit about what it does, I didn't know all the things it can do. But when I saw the XML formatting, I'm like, you know what? That is pretty useful because XML on its own is just a lot of data with a lot of indenting, and I think it's hard to be a readable format for a lot of data. And so
Yeah.
this really helps.
And again, the same principles of, using colorization to break up the visual space and helping you seek to what you want are easier. Like, okay, why doesn't this font look as big as I want? Well, I can see font size right there, right?
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
You know,
And you know what? The other thing that is like if you're not very good at XML, it kind of makes it easier to understand.
yeah. And on that note, I also do regexes. This is actually a formatter in the module irregular, which is there to basically help make regexes less painful for a long time. But I added it to Posh as well because you shouldn't need to know about the other one to use it. Also, I gotta fix that typo.
Yeah, I was
Drawing
gonna
attention to my
say you
typo there.
misspelled capture.
Look, I'm just trying to enhance readability, not spelling.
He's real,
Uh,
man, He makes mistakes like all of us.
Indeed. Unfortunately, these mistakes are checked in, so I'm gonna have to have that. Like it's kind of all of our nightmares. Like somebody's gonna look over our commit log and see that we fixed a typo. Oh God, that again. But yeah, we all do. Another one that it came over from Easy Out is get process heat map. So just like your normal get process, pretty much at least, but it gives you a heat map color scheme around, you know, the working sets and the like. Yay. The last easy dumb ones are time spans and time zones. And we actually just saw basically how time spans will look. Normally, they'll print every property of a time span, which is okay, total seconds, total minutes, total hours, yada, yada, yada.
Man,
This is a little bit more readable.
what?
And one thing that can drive people batty is ISO formats for time spans, although you still have to remember the name of the ISO, but hopefully this will help drill it in, right? So I can say new time span, hours, 24 minutes, 30 seconds, 15, format custom view, ISO 8601, 8601. That is the name of the ISO format that we all have to use for date times, and boom. That wonderfully unreadable string that is used to represent these in standard form.
So can you still see all the objects that come from new time span?
That's a wonderful question. And let's talk about the get out of jail free card in PowerShell for formatting. Pipe to select star. If you pipe to select star, then whatever type name decoration, that'll go away and you'll just see all the properties on an object.
You
So
really want to
yes, you
mess with
can.
someone. You really want to mess with someone. You do a type formatter for select object,
Uh, mm,
but please don't.
I'm actually thinking about whether that'd even be possible. I think the selected objects actually have like each of the type names attached to them. So you're selecting this type of source object, but I'd have to go look. Um, but yeah, I guess one of the bits of the subtext of the presentation here is that in the many years that I've been doing PowerShell, I've learned a lot about little nooks and crannies, including ones that most people use every day, like formatting, but don't really kind of appreciate its breadth. And yeah, I figured out how to do some cool things there. So um, time zones are also one of those by default. Here, let's go over and see what your normal get time zone looks like. It doesn't have a formatter, so it displays it as a list because it has more than 4 properties. And I'm getting a lot of duplication of information here, right? More to the
Uh,
point, I'm not actually getting anything really helpful as far as like the time zone itself. So here's how I display it. Add a
Okay.
virtual property to give you the local time and the time zone, give you the ID, local time, and display name. And in this case, just in this case, yes, I do have a centered column. And what we can actually do is turn one PowerShell one-liner into a world clock. So it's like, okay, I'm going to be talking with somebody from, say, Japan. Actually, this is a bad example because as I'm going to accidentally demonstrate that one doesn't have a standard time zone name, but all right, I'm talking to somebody on the East Coast. I can go basically look at these time zones and get a day-night color scheme, essentially telling me where they're at. So Pacific time here, great. Eastern Standard, 8:50.
That is pretty cool.
And that's just basically PowerShell formatting. And somehow that demo took 22 minutes. I need to take
So,
a little bit of formatting of this out here.
so can you scroll back up for a second? I want to see the column name for the top for the right hand column. So,
Display name.
display name. Oh, so it's actually two there. It's the UTC, and I was just wondering,
The
like,
display name has the offset and the name, which is why, like, if we go back to this is just so redundant. This has all the info. If I wanted to be really easy, this could just be I could just display this one column and it would be enough.
mhm. What I
But
was thinking was it would be like, and so this is kind of not formatting, but because I deal with this all the time. I have two teams I deal with in different time zones across the world, three teams actually, and it's always like trying to figure out times is fun. Like if I could say, I don't even remember what your command was there, get time zone, and then maybe pump that out to like a where and say,
yeah,
something like this zone, that zone, and that zone.
so we could say where object ID like Eastern.
Yeah.
Ooh, use match, regex.
Mhm.
Well, fine, fine. Only because you're here to browbeat me, and I write modules for regex,
I'm
so you
actually
know better.
I'm actually browbeating Mike.
Yes.
And actually, I'm going to go for display name here and be like, what the hell? Okay. So there goes my nice demo.
Uh-oh.
Bet you it works with like.
Or it's not called display name.
Right.
Well, let's pipe it to get member and double check.
It's display name.
Yeah. Just double checking. Oh, I had to do the list available. It's the little things. Okay. So there we go.
You went back to like.
I went back to like.
I love like.
Monsters.
Just so you know, I
I'll take
love
you to
like.
match.com now. I like too. I just I don't like the ambiguity between like and match. I kind of wish I could use both in one. Yeah.
Oh,
That's because you're a star.
And the winner of the dad joke of the night goes as expected to Stephen Judd, I think. Can I declare winners here?
Not yet.
All right. We got to
that
see if there are
that
any late
that time
entries.
zone thing is so useful.
Well, I mean, again, I was trying to figure out what built-in commands and built-in formatting could be better. And it's perfect point in time to say it. Look, I love GitHub for its collaboration. If you want formatting, file an issue. If you have an idea of how to make the perfect formatting for yourself, give me a PR. Water's warm. Come play.
On a side note, has anybody ever met anyone from Easter Island?
I
It's
cannot say that I have.
I can't either. I don't know that it's ever come up.
I don't like those guys anyway. They all have big heads.
You're really just trying to
Oh,
top the prize from a second ago, right?
oh,
Anyway, okay, we got one more demo that I'm gonna kind of show off right now because one of the other things that I tried to make easy here, although I don't do any customization out of the box because basically too many people would start yelling at me, but we can customize the prompt too. Now, for those that don't know,
Right.
prompt is a PowerShell function that is called just before PowerShell asks for input. It outputs text that goes before a prompt. I know it's a little bit weird for its name, but prompt is the text before the prompt. Anyway, we can modify the prompt, and that can be incredibly useful. This is why POSH makes that easy. So we can see information about the current prompt by just saying POSH prompt. And hey, look, it's another nice formatter. Now I'm going to highlight one trick here that is actually kind of a happy accident. I'm going to go back into my VS Code for a second, and I'm going to show you this directory with a little bit of fresher eyes. So we have POSH input and POSH prompt are both in a subdirectory of POSH stackable. The way this is working is almost like inheritance, okay? So these aren't defining most of the things of a stackable function, they are. These only have a README. But this README becomes a property on the object. So I can say something like POSH prompt README. And there we go. And here's the cool part. There's a command called show markdown, which I always forget doesn't have the best of all format. But I can use show markdown to basically highlight and auto link that README. Isn't that a nifty trick? So all I'm doing here is saying, show me the README, and I'm going to give you a little bit of extra helper text about what you can do to prompt or work with POSH prompt. Okay. So let's pipe it to get member to see what we can do. Yay, that colorization. So we have some alias properties. After is append, before is prepend, undo is pop. And then we got the built-in methods. I think somebody might need to mute.
Not anymore.
All right.
Okay.
There we go. Was wondering if there was a question, but anyway, we got a few note properties, the function name, our README here, and the stack, which is basically all the different changes that we're going to do to it. We can append, clear, pop, prepend, push, replace, stringify, and get the current prompt. Okay, so let's modify the prompt to replace the username with asterisks. Easy one here. I'm doing this for basically on Linux and that for Windows. And there we go. Now, again, this is, if you want your prompt, you can keep your prompt. If you had powerline loaded, it's going to modify the powerline prompt instead. If you had any prompt modifications before you loaded POSH, it will keep those in the stack. And once you unload POSH, it'll replace your prompt with whatever it was originally. Now we can provide a string or script block or emoji number to replace parts of it. So I'm going to basically say, hey, replace the PS and space with this emoji. And there's one half of it. Look there. And let's fix the other end. Cool. And I'm going to add some content to the end of the prompt. And I'm actually going to be exposing some prompt widgets going forward, but I'm not quite there yet. But let's just go ahead and add that. And I don't think that's quite distinctive enough because my cursor is going to be over here. So let's undo that step or pop it. And let's add a better end by enclosing it in brackets. And there we go. So POSH provides those fundamental building blocks to modify your prompt, make your shell more sleek. And just if I want to say, screw all this, I can say POSH prompt. I can type. Now you see why I wrote show demo though.
Yeah.
So prompt modifications there too. There's also profile modification as well. So profiles run when PowerShell starts, and it makes it easy to explore and modify your profile. So you got the same approach. Hey, here's a README. There's where my current profile is. Here's how I can add stuff to it or remove stuff to it. And I can pipe it in get member and see what I can do. I can import or remove modules. I can find matches within it. I can create a new one. I can get the file or files. So get the specific file, get any current files. I actually think I only have the one. I can basically say, hey, I always want to import POSH, and it'll make the modification to do that. And I can make modification to do something like this too. And just to kind of prove the point, dot profile will now say, welcome to PowerShell, and we'll import POSH. And I think this is kind of the end of the Mr. Toad's Wild Ride for a second. I'm just going to go double check. It's pretty unique in its approach, does not contain any commands. It's built entirely by adding PowerShell formatting, extending PowerShell types, built primarily with easy out. Help out generates documentation. I guess that's worth briefly going over. If I go back over to this directory structure here and I pick the right monitor to click on, inside of the docs directory, I'll get any of the different script methods or properties that have documentation as a nice markdown file. So I can say, this gets the height of the host, for instance, right? And I try to make various things in PowerShell a little bit easier to get at. So you can get posh.runspace or posh.process or posh.modules or jobs or host, history, etc. History is probably, or not history, error is probably a good one to kind of talk through very briefly. Let's see if I've got any errors. Of course I do. Cool. I have extended the error object so I can actually look at all the different errors by line or by type of error. And this is just basically taking the built-in variable $error, which contains every time you ever screwed up in that PowerShell session, and helping me kind of explore what those are. And
So
yeah.
when you were in that so this is part of the POSH module, what you're
That's
showing?
part of POSH.
That's
POSH
cool.
is a coolness kitchen sink.
And when you're in this kitchen sink and you're doing that by type example you just showed there, what's the reference to get to one of those lines? The demo you just showed where you did error by type.
Well, how about I just go get the history?
Well, what I mean is when you go to by type and you say, okay, right? And so now how do you reference that by type?
How does it work?
No.
Or
So pull back up your error by type so you get that list,
okay.
right? I how am I
Dollar error
accessing?
is $error is a variable that is
No,
built
I
into
know that.
PowerShell. No. I'm decorating $error, so I'm adding a script method or property called by type. And when you say $error by type, it goes over what was in the collection and it gives you a new collection sorted by type.
Oh, so this is a list. So then I would go back one more time. Uh, $error by type dot system exception.
Yep.
Okay, that's the part I didn't understand how to reference those.
Yeah, time zone not found exception. I can find all the times that I screwed that up.
You're not going to Fiji, that's for sure.
No, I am not. Again,
That's cool.
the goal here is to do as much as one can to improve the PowerShell user experience, and with one hand tied behind your back by not having any commands in the module itself. Ooh, there's one other good one though that just I love it
But
because it's so tiny.
before you switch, Edgar had a good question. He wanted to know if
Sure.
these exception methods, do they tab complete?
I believe they will. Not as ideally as I'd like though. Let's see. Could be better.
Okay.
Um, so one of the other things that it does is it gives you the ability to manipulate default parameters. I'm typing the wrong variable. So I can say posh parameters and I can manipulate defaults. And I actually set a couple of defaults here. All right. Actually, ignore that one. This one, this was a trick that I had in a module called IcePack a long time ago. And IcePack was for customizing the ISE. It was a very nice and helpful module in the same sort of way as this is. But I don't think I've opened up the ISE in a couple of years. I don't know how many people on this call have. So I wanted to have that capability. Um, but the last time I built it, I had built this by overwriting the function out default. And this time I got to make it even smarter. And I basically just say, whenever out default is run, it has a, you got your global PS default parameter values here. This is as simple as you can make the trick in a one-liner. And what that'll do is it'll give me a variable last output, which is the last output of the command. Now I know that you guys have all run something and wished you'd assigned it to a variable, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
Well, if you got POSH loaded, dollar last output. And what's especially nice about the way this particular trick runs is it just overwrites the last one every time it runs. So you're not actually chewing up memory to try to keep a big history of outputs. You're literally only ever having one in there at a time. I also got a +1 on module names from you, Mike. And yeah, modules are brands. I try to have half decent names for my modules.
I love the names, man. I think they're good plays on things. I find that so interesting. I go through the gallery and I see this up, and I'm like, man, they can write good code, but they can't think of a name for their module.
On that note, I am so surprised. How has PowerShell been around 16, 17 years and nobody else has named it POSH? Is it a matter of like, you know, the pure gall to name your own module POSH, or is it did
Here's
just everybody added something else for some other clarifying reason? Why was this name still available? I don't know, but I love it.
it just needed you to come along and add some spice to our console using the POSH module. So that
Yes,
way, all you have
I
to do is tell it what you want, what you really, really want.
yes, the dry jokes will last and last and last. The really good and sad part about this, though, is that the only people that will get them are already like of the dad joke age.
Come
I don't know
on,
how to take that.
it every doesn't everyone know who POSH Spice is?
Um,
I unfortunately do.
yeah, I think unfortunately, like it's one of the cruelest things about the module name, and that particular joke is like, if you were alive in the '90s, I don't even need to add the tune there. I just say the phrase, and it's playing in your head,
I'm
rent
telling you
free.
what, you can without attribution use my subtitle for your Posh Spice module here.
Yeah, I
It
used to
adds
describe
spice to your console.
Microsoft as a place of capricious geeks and nervous lawyers, and I might be a capricious geek, but I've got enough nervous lawyer inside of me to try to be conscious of the boundaries of potential litigation. So I'm good with the illusions, but I don't think I'm actually going to directly make a meme that references this. And now, if anybody else
Hey,
wants to do this, then
hey,
Sure.
good for
James.
you. There
Hey,
we go. We
James.
got some memes.
Hey, James. Could you tell me what you want? What you really, really want to see next?
From this module or from the
That
user
was.
group this evening, or are you
I
just making the
blew it
dad
up.
joke?
I blew it up because that was supposed to be for Steven, and I said, James.
I did have
Not
a
only
question.
did you
Welcome
blow
to
it
ask
up,
him.
I already said that joke and you weren't listening.
I know you did. I just wanted.
I already said that joke at the beginning.
I
We have
know.
more.
What the heck? We've got
You
joke
know,
inception.
we do. And beyond that, like Posh has been a nickname for PowerShell for forever. So,
Yeah.
there are many avenues to make joking fun of the module name. Everybody can have that fun as long as they keep it pretty good natured. I'm happy. I I don't know how to say it other than this module is to some degree a little clickbaity. Like it's not going to, fundamentally change your PowerShell world on I have this command that lets me work with graph perfectly now or something level, but it is going to give you a lot of sleekness and coolness at pretty low cost. So,
So
enjoy the
James,
clickbait.
I do have a question on it. So let's say
I did hear somebody else pop up with a
Oh,
question a second ago, and I wanted to make sure that they had the chance. But
sure.
I want your question too.
Yeah,
Who?
yeah.
All right.
This is Matt Cargill. I had a question about the module as a whole. Would you be open to like a module parameter that would disable all the formatters and then adding a command where I could add the ones I want? Like, say, for instance, I've worked on a formatter for my file system a lot, and I don't want that one necessarily in there, kind of thing.
I'm mixed on that particular request, and here's the rationale why. Okay. The first part of it is technical. Right now, Easy Out creates one format file and one types file, basically. I could make it create many formats and types files and load those up individually, and that might not be a bad feature to add to Easy Out. Okay? So I'm not opposed to the idea to have that capability. It's just a little bit harder of a path and definitely more complex from an authorship perspective. The other sort of problem is essentially, well, like, take the prompt customization versus the formatting. If you have to opt into something, less people are going to use it. And I'd rather people opt in or opt out of the module overall than start to get into that game of, turn this on, turn that on. Now, I do want to make various things more customizable. Like I want to make the icons more customizable and the colorization more customizable throughout. How exactly I get there and how elegantly I make that kind of customization that you want, those are open questions. But it's not my main priority because, like, if you're going to be the type of user that basically wants to go a la carte, you're probably not exactly the ideal type of user for a module just designed to make things easy. Like,
Right.
if you wanted to get into the technical iterations of things, the thing that I'm most concerned about actually is people using the POSH variable in their scripts and getting used to programming with PowerShell with its help, and then having that kind of screw you up later when you try to build something that doesn't have POSH loaded. So yeah, they're good technical questions. It's just not something that I am, at least I try to be a judicious developer, and part of that is knowing when you're biting off more than you want to chew at a moment. And I know that that would be a larger bite than I wanted to chew, especially that I wanted to chew prior to delivering a talk at a conference.
We have a question from Ed, who's been waiting very patiently to ask this question. Hey, Ed, do you want to ask a question?
Sure, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so James, I think you almost sort of touched on this and then blew by it way early in the process.
Sure.
But how does the colorization work if your screen's not a black background, either in VS Code or Terminal or just
Oh,
a regular window?
well, let me get terminal loaded back up again and show a bit of another module off for a second.
Okay.
So in cool module territory, we've got a module called Terminal Velocity, which is a module I built to customize terminal. Okay. And hopefully this will be my friend here, but we're going to get or WT color scheme pipe to get random. It looks like that formatter could use a little bit of work. There we go. So now we're on one with a bright background. Could use a little bit of work, but I'm going to blame the color scheme more than I'm going to blame it, if that makes sense. Because all I'm doing is basically saying, pick these points on the color scheme, right? And if they don't have good complementary colors, it might look like shit.
Okay, so you're taking advantage of a pre-built color scheme that I wasn't aware of. Cool. Okay.
Yeah. In VS Code, it'd be doing the same thing. In case you're not aware, there's the iTerm2 color scheme repository, which just has, I think, a few hundred different color schemes that you can use.
Okay.
And yeah, I could probably get into the slight hell of figuring out whether you're on a light or a dark color scheme and doing something custom in that case, but I'm not trying to rush right there either.
Mhm.
So your mileage may vary depending on your current color scheme, but that's true of all color schemes.
So,
Yep.
so, so I guess it would be a fair assessment to say that if, regardless of the background color, right now you sort of have just one sort of set of colors for the colorized text in formatters, right?
Yes,
Okay,
they are right now more hard coded. That will likely change.
that'd be
I
interesting to
consider it
see
a
down the
lot
road.
more likely to have people want to customize the colors of particular objects than a la carte formatting for an object. But if you believe that I'm wrong, file issues, make your case.
No, I wanna wrap up here because I think you've basically come to the meat of what you wanted to cover. But I did want to say, like when you did your coloring, how many colors is in use? Is it like for example, is it just 8?
Well, in
8 or
terms of
12?
other PowerShell things that I can show, sorta, kinda. Also slight misnomers. So we're gonna go to 4bitcss.com, which is a creation on top of that iTerm color scheme stuff that I mentioned earlier. The reason it's called 4-bit CSS is it gives you 16 colors.
Okay, okay.
Technically, it actually gives you 18 colors because you can have a different foreground and
Yeah, but
background
who's
color as
counting?
well. Well, yeah, at this point you lose your catch points if you get really technical. But these you know give you a brief preview of what all these different color schemes would be and how they would render,
Okay.
and
All
give
right.
you a way that you'd have the same color scheme on, say, a website. Actually, I should go to that particular one for a second because it's a cool one. But one of my easy to remember light favorites is Batman. It's not the best for contrast. Consolus is the one that I tend to use. But another one that's quite nice is Jackie Brown.
I just read that it has a bright black color.
Yes,
That's hilarious.
I know. This might be a really, really obscure, like, cultural deep cut, but I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Shallow Grave. It's like very early Ewan McGregor, like early 90s. Uh, and it involves them interviewing roommates at the beginning of it. And they have a goth candidate, and Ewan McGregor asks her, when you wake up in the morning, do you decide on a shade of black to wear?
Huh. And that was called Shallow Grave.
Shallow Grave.
Yeah, I dig it.
It's a good movie. But yeah, definitely older than certain audience members, which, yeah, that's one of those phrases that makes me feel extra old. Anyway, so let's minimize
Well,
out that, go back to the terminal here for a second.
well, thanks for the color information. I appreciate it. And just so you know, I do remember using Ice Pack, and I was using the ISE this afternoon at work. So,
Well, I wish I could give you more hope for a future version of Ice Pack, but that is not the direction I'm going to go.
understood.
I, I'm
The
I'm glad that it's at least somewhat positively remembered. It was a very useful module for its time.
Oh yes, I
So
definitely loved it. It was great.
I still want close all files in VS Code, though. I really do. I'm gonna make it happen one day. But anyway, um, additional
Uh,
questions, comments, thoughts?
No, this is really good, James. You obviously have spent time. I really do appreciate how when you were colorizing Get Member, you thought about things that most people won't think about, which is where does your eye track and how quickly can you disseminate information. And so that really shows to your attention to detail and your knowledge of the subject. So this was a great presentation.
Well, thank you. Especially considering, I just want to be really clear here. This is not technically a presentation. This is an off the cuff. Here's a few demos. Here's a fresh off the press module for you guys. and I didn't really want to write a big PowerPoint after a bunch of talks this summer. So if anybody wants me to come by and actually talk about this at a summit-like thing, I'm going to be happy to. And I'm pretty sure that this would be worth talking about, something like that.
All right. So I got a
Oh,
question.
yes.
I got a
Go
question
ahead.
for Stephen.
Okay.
All right. So Stephen, when we began this, did you think we would be learning about Hellas ratings and who used the ISC today? We ended
No,
up in a very different place than I thought we would be, but it's been a very enjoyable ride.
Well, I endeavor to give enjoyable rides. On that note, the light shameless plug, again, you can do the sponsorship on GitHub and book your time to get your own customized Mr. Toad's Wild Ride through whatever part of PowerShell you'd like. Ask any question that you'd like, shoot the shit for a couple of hours if you want, and let me know what your PowerShell problems are, and we'll try to solve them together.
All right.
So, yeah. Should I stop sharing now? Or we
Yeah.
good?
Yeah.
You guys got more you want to see?
Well, let's wrap up our recording, and we could always talk more for the people who stuck around. And so if you are watching at home, you made it this far, thank you so much for sticking with us. We always encourage people to come and join us in person. The Research Triangle PowerShell user group can be found on Meetup or at rtpsug.com. The bonus is you get to come, and if you come, you get to ask the questions and get to find out exactly what you're looking for. So if you'd like to come and join us, please check us out online. If you're looking for more videos to watch, we have about 140 videos of previous meetings, and I'm sure you're going to find something PowerShell related that is going to that you'll find enjoyable. Stephen, it's been quite the ride.
yeah, man. We kind of rode the rainbow, as they might say, on this one.
Yeah, but I have to say, James is quite the enigma when it comes to doing this stuff. He's got a very brilliant mind. It's part of letting James present is watching that flower unfold and grow and just see how his mind works. It's the same sort of with Justin Grody, but I digress here. All
Well,
right.
Yep.
thank you. And again, I'll remind everybody, you don't have to know how the sausage is made. You can just enjoy the flavor, So enjoy the flavor, taste the rainbow, like, share, subscribe, etc. See you all next whatever time. Let me know what other topics you always want to talk about. Chances are I got a PowerShell module for it. And I might have made a huge mistake by offering that.
Next time we're gonna have to see the OBS stuff that you're doing. That's we'll put that up for next time.
All right.
Stephen, any parting
should be
parting
visually
words
fun.
here? I'm
No,
sorry, James.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, James. I don't mean to step on you. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that would be visually fun. We just all started talking at the same time.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
after you, please.
Yes. No, Mike, I don't have any more terrible jokes. I managed to get quite a few in, and whoever is lucky enough to watch the recording will get to enjoy them as well. So it's been fun hanging out, and thank you very much, James. Really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you, James, and thanks to everyone who stuck around with us tonight. We're going to wrap it up here. For those that are in person, we'll continue the conversation, but we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.